What if the story you've always been told about the Civil War isn't the full truth? What if the version written in history books, clean, structured, and easy to understand, was designed to simplify a conflict that was anything but simple? For generations, people have been taught that the Civil War was a straightforward battle between good and evil, a moral war fought to end slavery and preserve the Union. But history, when examined closely, begins to crack under the weight of its own contradictions. Because the reality of the Civil War is far more complicated, far more uncomfortable, and far more human than most narratives are willing to admit. At its core, the Civil War was not just about slavery, it was about power. It was about control over a rapidly changing nation. The North and the South were not just geographically divided, they represented two entirely different economic systems, two visions of the future. The North was industrializing at a rapid pace, building factories, railroads, and cities, while the South remained deeply rooted in agriculture, relying heavily on enslaved labor to sustain its economy. This clash created tension that had been building for decades, long before the first shots were fired. And yet, many history books reduce this complexity into a single cause, ignoring the broader forces that made conflict almost inevitable. But perhaps what is even more revealing is how the war was presented to the people at the time. Governments on both sides crafted powerful narratives, using speeches, newspapers, and public messaging to shape how citizens understood the conflict. Soldiers were told they were fighting for honor, for freedom, for survival, but many had little understanding of the larger political and economic stakes. Letters from soldiers reveal confusion, fear, and even regret. These are voices that rarely make it into textbooks, yet they tell us more about the true nature of the war than any official account ever could. There is also a deeper truth that often goes unspoken, the idea that wars are rarely fought purely for moral reasons. While the abolition of slavery became a defining outcome of the Civil War, it was not always the central goal for everyone involved. For some leaders, preserving the Union was more important than ending slavery. For others, maintaining economic power and social structure was the priority. This does not diminish the significance of emancipation, but it complicates the narrative in ways that are often overlooked. As we begin this journey into the hidden truths of the Civil War, one thing becomes clear: this was not a simple story with a clear beginning and end. It was a deeply complex conflict shaped by human ambition, fear, and contradiction. And the more we look beyond the surface, the more we begin to understand just how much has been left untold. While soldiers fought and died on the battlefield, another war was unfolding behind closed doors, a war of politics, strategy, and power. Leaders on both sides were making decisions that would determine the course of the conflict, but those decisions were not always driven by principles alone. In many cases, they were influenced by pressure, ambition, and the desire to maintain control. This hidden political dimension of the Civil War is rarely explored in depth, yet it played a crucial role in shaping how the war was fought and how long it lasted. There were moments when peace might have been possible, moments when negotiations could have brought an end to the bloodshed. But those opportunities were often missed, or deliberately ignored. For some leaders, ending the war too soon carried risks. It could mean losing political support, appearing weak, or failing to achieve long-term goals. And so, the war continued, even when the human cost became almost unbearable. This raises a difficult and uncomfortable question: how many lives were lost not because the war had to continue, but because it was allowed to continue? Another layer of this hidden story lies in the way information was controlled. Propaganda was a powerful tool, used to maintain morale and justify the sacrifices being made. Newspapers published stories that emphasized heroism and victory, while downplaying defeat and suffering. The reality experienced by soldiers was often very different. Many faced harsh conditions, with limited food, poor medical care, and constant exposure to disease. For them, the war was not a glorious struggle, it was a daily fight for survival. At the same time, not everyone supported the war. There were significant numbers of people in both the North and the South who opposed it. Some refused to fight, others protested, and many simply tried to live their lives in the midst of chaos. These voices of dissent are often left out of the narrative, yet they reveal a society that was deeply divided, uncertain, and struggling to find its way.